this video here we're going to look at factor by grouping. So when you're factoring and you have four terms here, okay, what we want to do is try splitting it down the middle, okay, and then we look at this first part and look at the second part. Alright, so in the first part we want to factor out the greatest common factor. So you can see here that we can factor out an x squared, and that leaves us with x minus 3. And then in the second part here, factor out the greatest common factor, which would be a 4. So if we factor the 4 out, that's going to leave us with x minus 3. Okay? Alright, so look at this. You see how we have a common binomial factor, the x minus 3? Alright, so factor that out. So let's pull out an x minus 3. Alright, so if we take an x minus 3 out of this, we're left with what? The x squared. And if we take the x minus 3 out of this one, we're left with the plus 4. And this would be your answer. Okay, let's look at two more. Alright, so we've got four terms. We're going to split it down the middle. So we look at the first part. We can factor out an x squared, and that leaves us with x plus 6. The second part, the greatest common factor, would be 2. But watch this. If we factor out a plus 2, that's going to leave us with negative x minus 6. And you can see this term and this term aren't the same. So instead of factoring out a positive 2, we're going to factor out a negative 2. And so remember, when you factor out a negative, that changes the sign of each term. So that's going to leave me with x plus 6. Alright, so now we have our common binomial factor, the x plus 6. So when we factor out an x plus 6, when we take it out of this part, we're left with x squared. Take it out of this part, we're left with minus 2. And this would be our answer. Alright, one more. Alright, so once again, four terms. Let's split it down the middle. So out of this first part, I can factor out an x squared. And that leaves me with x minus 1. In this part, if I factor out a 5, I'm left with negative x plus 1, which those aren't the same. See, I just need the signs here to change. So instead of factoring out a positive 5, I'm going to factor out a negative 5. And that's going to leave me with x minus 1 when I factor it out of this second part. And so here I have a common binomial factor, and I can factor out the x minus 1. So that's x minus 1. And when we take the x minus 1 out of this part, I'm left with x squared. Take the x minus 1 out of this part, I'm left with the minus 5. And this would be our answer. Alright, so hope this video helped. If you like it, you can subscribe and watch my other ones. Alright, thanks.